Welcome to Current Issues in Athletic Administration. We are here today with podcast regular, my old friend, Eddie Wilson. And I do mean old when you see this video, both of us. But Coach, thanks for being here today.
Appreciate you having me, man. I went with the polo today, with the button up, because I thought we were a little bit more professional. And then I see you didn't think that was necessarily the case. So next time I appreciate a little bit more information with regards to expectations.
I believe that what would Coach Katz say about this situation, right? Dress for the job you want. You are currently a section vice president. You have a title, right? I'm Woody Harrison. I'm shooting for a raise. I'm still at the site level, but you got the title. So why don't you take us through your background, Coach? Other than being the athletic director, what else are you involved with? Take us through the quick story of how you landed in the athletic director seat so we can chop it up about all things athletic administration.
Awesome. Yeah, quick of it. I am at Fairfield High School in Fairfield, California, Northern California, right between San Francisco and Sacramento. I began my teaching career at Fairfield in 2001, I believe. So I think we're coming up on 24 years teaching, taught English, teach English, and was appointed the position of the head basketball coach. Started teaching and coaching at the same time and had some great experiences, some good successes, and moved into the AD role, I think 13 years ago. I think I'm coming up on 14 years. We had a vacancy and it seemed like I was the one that needed to fill the job. And it was something I had been interested in and struggled through those first couple of years of figuring out what was what, and still here. We've done some good things, and I really, really enjoy the athletic director job. It's a tough job for sure, but it's something that, every morning I wake up excited about attacking different things that need to be attacked, and got a great group of people working for us and awesome kids. So that's the quick background of it. Still coaching, still teaching, doing the athletic director thing. So wearing a lot of hats right now.
Appreciate that. Also give a little background on your role with the section and what section you're in and any other information you can give about that for the wide swath of listeners.
Yeah, SAC Joaquin section. I think we're heading towards the question of what the role with the CSADA and how that kind of evolved. But I just always felt like I wanted to do more. This is what type of guy I've been on site within the coaching community, and then now with the athletic director job. Just always wanted to try to find a way to get myself into a little bit more and find out, why things are the way they are and maybe how I can impact change if change is needed. And so just grew in the AD thing and within our section. I think there's a lot of turnover in the athletic director world. I'm sure you're familiar and your listeners are going to be familiar with that. And so now as somebody who's been at it for some years, I think naturally rise and been involved in a couple of different committees, playoff committees, basketball advisory committees, and then I don't even remember how it happened, to be honest with you, but I know there was conversations about the section VP role with the CSADA, and tossed out my interest in that, not even knowing what it was, to be honest with you, and then it fell in my lap, and it's been a little bit overwhelming. It was, to be honest with you, just so much going on. I think I walked in I didn't come in right away. I was a little bit late to the party to start the year, and things were already rolling, and it was just like choo, choo, choo. Things just flying. It was crazy. It's an opportunity for me professionally to interact with other people that have great ideas and are doing great things. And I'm excited for the second year now that I feel like my head's above water. And now I'm hoping to interact a little bit more and maybe take on bigger roles and just continue to grow.
Love that. Thanks for setting that up for us. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think the SAC Joaquin has 170-ish schools.
Oh, we're beyond that now, I think. I think we're closer to 200. I'd have to look that up, and maybe that's something I'm supposed to know, so I don't really appreciate you blasting me in front of everybody. But I believe we're closer to 2, maybe even over 2. But I'll get that information for you, and I'll share that, and hopefully you can add it to the cool things you do after interviews.
No problem. And since I accidentally got you voluntold onto the basketball committee recently, it's just one of those other things that I continue to prod you with. But let's get back to the business of why we're here. What would you say if I asked what weighs most heavily on your mind right now from a professional standpoint?
the overarching concern for me is always, am I doing enough for my coaches? And then directly underneath that would be, are they, my coaches, doing enough for our student athletes? Are we leaving the lasting impressions that we want to leave on our students? And one of the main reasons I had an interest in being an athletic director is I just wanted to, I felt like I was doing good things as a coach that I wanted to share with other coaches on my campus specifically in a more like authoritative role. And am I giving the coaches on my staff the information that they need? Am I giving them, providing the resources that they need? Am I giving them the support that they need? Because if I can do all of that for them, in theory, they would then be able to do everything that we want for them to do for our kids from an education based athletic standpoint with regards to character development, et cetera, right? When you ask me like what weighs on my mind most heavily, I think every day is, did I do this for that particular coach? Am I doing enough for this particular staff to give them the abilities to maximize their student athletes? So just the hope is that it trickles down and we take care of everybody. Ultimately, it's the student athletes and their experience, right? But I feel like if I can provide a greater experience for my coaches, they can provide the greater experience for the athletes.
No doubt. And I'm going to push in a little bit on this, push back and say, let's parse that out now, Ed. What are the things that you are doing for your coaches, right? What are the examples of things that you have implemented that is showing appreciation, it's showing support, it's helping them grow? And what are the things you're thinking about doing? Or maybe you are aware that others are doing that you're curious about, right? So let's provide some examples for people that are listening. These are the things I've implemented. These are the things I want
Yeah,
to do. I just haven't figured out yet.
I think that's a great question. And, uh, people that are in the job know that you start out with a plan every day of the things you're going to attack. And then you uh, almost unwillingly thrown into other fires, right? You're having to put out other fires. I would say the thing that I'm most proud of with regards to how I help coaches is we started a professional development program on our campus with coaches. As teachers, we're thrown into PD experiences all the time, oftentimes ones that we're not particularly interested in, right? But so we took that idea and we used it for our coaching staff. And so monthly we have a different topic. And it's something that we had put a lot of efforts into when COVID hit. We died a little bit because getting people on the Google Meets and the Zooms and stuff was a little bit tough. And then as we're getting ourselves back into normal life post COVID, we're moving back into our PD calendar. But so once a month we get together and there's a topic of sorts. It could be something specific to the section. We've got new rules and state in the section with regards to emergency action plans and how we execute those plans and the need to practice those plans, et cetera. So that's going to be our early PD in July to ensure that everybody's got those in place. And right. But then we'll have a PD about NCAA clearance regulations and new rules with regards to that and core classes and stuff. We'll bring a counselor in and have the counselor sit down and talk about the 14 core classes and blah, 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 right? We've had sessions that I've had our sports med people run about training and rehab and appropriate ways to warm up, things of that sort. But beyond that, to me, it's just about, I think, disseminating information the best way. If I see something cool if I hear something on a podcast, I'll throw it out. If I see a good article, I toss it out. If there's something specific to a sport, my football coach probably is annoyed by me because I don't know why my Twitter algorithm, I'm just getting all these cool football things. And so I'm like firing like blocking schemes and here's a cool drill they did with plyo balls. And you know what I mean? So I just try to be involved. And then I think the other thing is direct, open communication. I foster those type of relationships. We are talking constantly. And it could be simple, subtle needs. It could be bigger philosophies. I encourage my coaches to reach out to me. We talk a lot, we text a lot, and like I said, minor things, big things. And then the other thing is and I would encourage all ADs to find a way to do this. Fostering relationships within the coaching community on campus. I want my baseball coach to reach out to my water polo coach. I want my water polo coach to have conversations with my badminton coach, and just good practices, things that are working. Here's how we handle this situation. Here's the best way to deal with this kid or this type of kid. And just I think relationships. You've heard this before. It's all about relationships. And so everything I can do to create good relationships, I try to do.
Yeah, I
With
love that.
regards to things I would like to do,
Hold
which I
on.
think,
Yeah, but let me go to this first, because obviously, if you can pull that off, the inherent value in time spent together is immeasurable, right? And that's the thing that I would imagine is a challenge. It's something that I've wanted to do, right? Which is going to come to your next question, but have always hesitated because our coaches give so much time, right? Burdening them with another, hey, you got to come all the way over here to campus, especially when I don't know what the percentage of off-campus coaches is for you. But so in a quick soundbite, how do you do it to where it's generative and not just, there's only two people there? And what would you advise to get somebody to just dive in and try it out? Just give us a quick one on that, and then we'll go to what are the things that you still want to try to do?
in response to that, I think the first thing, and this is just from me, I still coach, and I was a coach for a long time, right? And then as an educator, we're more apt to participate in things that we think are meaningful, whether it's from an enjoyment standpoint or an educational standpoint. So I think the big thing for us is we don't mandate it, but they know everybody else is going, right? And then from a personality standpoint, like I'm pretty brash. I say what I want to say. Later on, if there's an issue and I can come back to that one PD that you didn't come to, I'm going to, and they know that. But I think having topics that are relevant, I'm not wasting your time. And that's things I say all the time is, you know, they have families, they're coaching, they're working. I get it. This particular Monday didn't work for you. Fine. Here's the presentation. Here's some of the things we talked about. Still on the email thread, right? But it's the conversations that we have within that particular topic, right? We always open up with a like working well, what's not so well for you and your program, and they just go on and they bounce stuff off each other, and it's awesome. And then we get into whatever it is we're talking about. So, anyways, I don't know that any of us are in positions where we can mandate that sort of stuff. Like you have to come. I think that would be unreasonable. But we want you to come, and there's a lot of value in you coming. And I think you can utilize this stuff down the road, if not right now. So I think that answered your question. And then with regards to things that I want to do, I just I I think this goes back to the what weighs most heavily is, are we doing enough? So like, how do I continue to foster relationships? How do I get a little bit more out of each individual? And specifically, I don't know that I have answers for that. I know that I'm willing to try anything, and that's part of, I think, my continued growth is what are they doing over at site A that I'm not doing? What's site B doing? How can I incorporate that? We get an idea, we like it, we try to fly it, we as is, maybe we make some alterations, but I think continuing to unify our staff, I've gotten to a point now where I feel really good about the majority of my programs from the perspective of the people leading those programs, the head coaches. We got to do a better job developing our assistant staff, our lower levels. So we've been talking about like a mentoring program. That's something I've been interested in. I don't know that I'll be able to fly it this year, but something that I'd like to. And that's pair up the new, I don't know, tennis coach with the old head basketball coach or something, and have arrange opportunities for them to get together and talk to each other about different things. I think a mentoring program. And the other thing that I want to do, and we've played with it unofficially, informally, is a true evaluation system for our coaches. I know all districts are different, and the role that the AD has with hiring and firing and things are different in places. And I don't have any true authority with regards to firing and hiring, and my evaluations really wouldn't mean anything in that grand scheme. But having informal evals where guys tell me things that they'd like to, or gals tell me things they would like to improve on, and then we pop in, or we have somebody else pop in and give them some feedback on those things. So I think those are the moves for us here soon.
No, I appreciate that. That's super helpful. I want to go to you're the second recording here, so audience understand we're working through some flow issues. But on the last one, I asked a question, which I'll ask you, which is if you could pin somebody down and ask them anything, what would you want to ask another AD? You could think about that while I give you the situation that was brought up on the last episode, which was how do you handle transfer situations and how deep should we go into the weeds as we navigate these transfers? What's your take on that, Ed? It doesn't have to be super in depth. Maybe just give some advice.
What is my take on the transfer situation?
Yeah, so that's the question I was asked on the last episode that I'm now going to float to you, which is, right, how do you handle transfers? How deep in the weeds should we go as we are parsing through all of the information to get to the other side of whatever that looks like?
Wow. I think my immediate official response would be that we're going to deal with transfers by the way of the law, right? There's pretty clean regulations and they lay that stuff out for us pretty clearly. Seems like we ask the questions we're supposed to ask, we get the answers we're supposed to get, and then we proceed in the appropriate direction, right? In terms of the weeds, I think what you're getting at is tricky for sure. And I think part of the reason that you're asking is because we know that there are some people that are maybe reading information one way and others are reading it another way, or some people are asking one type of question and some others are asking another type, and we're doing it for the benefit of our own campus. I think that we should all do what we're supposed to do regarding transfers. And when we know something's fishy, we should dig in and we should file it appropriately.
Correct. And I think that was the intention of the question. It's okay, the baseline minimum is what the bylaw says, right? And then there's, to your point, how do you embrace what the spirit of the rules are meant to do and hold that as the standard, right? And I think that was what he was after, because to your point, people read it in interpretive ways where at a baseline minimum, here are the rules, here are the bylaws, here's the spirit of what those are intended to do. And if you are not upholding those, look, you need to, because that's the playing field that the rest of us are playing on.
For sure. I think what you might be getting at is something that we've struggled with, and I know it's something we've talked about, and that is we want to look at each individual situation and do what's best for that particular kid. But sometimes doing what's best for that particular kid sets a precedence for us to then do the same thing for another kid, and it might not be what's best for that particular kid. And then we have to take the grand scheme of is what's best for one particular kid impacting other kids, right? And maybe there's a negative association or some sort of domino that falls that creates problems for somebody else. So again, the letter of the law is pretty simple. I think that the complexity comes in our interpretations, right? And then our follow through. And we know there's some people that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that's not my job. It's not your job, right? I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do on my campus. And those are conversations I have with my coaches as well. Because how come at blah, 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 this kid, and we deal with that. And I can't answer to that. I can do what I'm supposed to do, and you're going to do what you're supposed to do, or you're not going to be here. And like, where's that middle ground? Like the white, the black, what's the gray? We live in a gray world. So how do I make the gray more black? You know what I mean? I don't really want to do any of that sort of stuff. We just want to like keep it simple, do what we're supposed to do. But it's definitely a topic. And then back to your question of
I'm going to come back to that for you. I just wanted to know your answer to that. Okay. Because you're a section VP, one of the other things that this is designed to do is capture, okay, I'm down in the southern section. Heck, what's going on in SAC Joaquin that we might not be dealing with? What are the things you think or you are aware of that are going on in the SAC Joaquin section that other members within your section who maybe don't attend meetings, who don't go to the conference would want to know about, right? What are some of the things that are maybe unique to your section that you're wrestling with? Well, before we started recording, you talked about this clarity that's now been created between limited, out of season, in season. Maybe that's one of it, maybe that's not, but what's going on in the SAC Joaquin, Coach?
There's a lot going on in SAC Joaquin right now. And I think some of it is specific to us. And then there's things that I think that are a little bit more universal. So you just mentioned we had a change in our calendar and season of sports and what we can and can't do. when we're not in season. And a lot of it, I think, and you and I had talked like, oh, it's not too much of a change. And really it's not, but I think it just makes it a little bit easier for coaches to understand and for administrators to oversee. I think we now have to declare during different periods what specific teams are doing. So from July 15 is our date to, I believe, October 13 or something. That's period 4, I think is what it's being called. And so is your baseball team going to be limited, meaning they have X number of hours where they can function as, in our case, Fairfield High baseball? Or are they going to play in fall leagues? They're going to compete. They're gonna be huge triple SA. They're not associated with Fairfield High. They pay fees to be in the facilities. They can't use Fairfield High equipment, et cetera, right? So it just allows us to police it a little bit better and know who's doing what. There's some complications with it with regards to student athletes and how they handle different situations. And the spirit of the rule is good. And now we just got to make sure that we follow it and work our way through some of the other obstacles that might come. But beyond that, we're all in new leagues now. We went through our process there, and there was a lot of talk of moving to a conference model, which I know you're familiar with, where we have super leagues, and then within the leagues we have smaller leagues, and different schools can be in different leagues for different sports. And so there's a lot of talk of that. Obviously, the emergency action plans, which we had mentioned earlier, and enacting those and practicing those. That's new to us. The wet bulbs, which I don't.
That's on everyone. And let me go back to this conference realignment thing, because I think you do it clearly very differently than the Central Coast section. And give legitimately like a 30-second soundbite on how realignment works in the SAC Joaquin section.
Oh, chaos. So we're all in leagues, and then it's, hey, how do you feel about your league? And there's
And that's done by the section office. They determine who's in what league.
Yes. And then there's a form, and how did you do in your league in every sport for the last 3 or 4 years, whatever the cycle was, right? And then we're trying to follow a competitive equity model, right? And so we want everybody to be in positions where they have opportunities to be successful. But our section is so vast in terms of geography, it's difficult to have a school like Fairfield High. Our situation, I think, was a little bit unique, but we happen to be around a small chunk of schools, and we're separated from a lot of the other schools in our section. So geographically, it was like, hey, you belong here. But competitively, we had no business there, right? The scope of our programs weren't the same. We weren't finished. We weren't making the playoffs in any sports. And so, if it's a competitive equity model, you got to move us. So anyways, so you go through this paperwork process, and then the section fires out their first draft of, here's what we think we should happen with our new realignments, right? And now then schools have an opportunity to absorb it. And then we come back in and people make their cases for why they shouldn't be moved or why another school should not come into the new league, and et cetera. And then this process continues. And there were multiple meetings that all of us were a part of. And there was probably tenfold that outside of those meetings where other people, there's an executive committee, there's a group. And man, I would not want to be a part of that job, because I think it's an extremely tough position to be in. And you're not going to make everybody happy, right? So then in the midst of that was, hey, why don't we go to the conference model that we see in I believe the Southern section or the North Coast or whatever, right? And our section wasn't ready for that. That's going to require revamping bylaws and changing playoff policies and yada, yada, right? So I think that's one of the big things here moving in the next couple of years is how we're going to deal with this desire for many to get us into a conference model.
Thanks for sharing that, because again, our section leagues dictate who can be a member in their league or not. And the section is hands-off in regards to that. Other than if you want to switch areas, then you have to apply to join a league, almost like collegiate. Oh, we're going to join the ACC, right? So it's just an interesting way for people that aren't aware, even within your section, that's how it goes down. All right, let me pivot to this. I know you're on a time crunch today, so I got 2 more questions. One is related to the first one, but different in the sense that it might not be weighing most heavily on your mind, but what issues are consuming most of your bandwidth right now?
Right now, meaning like June 28th?
Sure. Interpretive question. Maybe right
Yeah.
now at this season of your life, maybe in this next year coming up, but this is what's weighing most heavily on what I want to do and what keeps
Right.
me up at night. This is what's
No, I
consuming
would
my bandwidth.
say, I would say specifically to this time, meaning this time of year, it's hiring coaches, right? It's clearing athletes, making sure your facilities are in order, equipment needs. We'll be moving in next week to ordering officials and buses, and right. So it's the facilitating meetings, setting up meetings for parents, for fall coaches, for whatever. So I think a fundraising, obviously, scheduling, planning. So like specific to this time of year. Just generally speaking, I think it's again for me, it's some of these transitioning. We're transitioning into a new league that's going to require some more efforts on our part. We're going from a very local league to a league that's going to require a lot of transportation for us. There's new bylaws within that league that I'm trying to learn, preparing my coaches for the different competition. We don't know these schools, so now trying to help them facilitate early scouts and things of the sort. Then obviously, like I said, some of the new rules that take place or that go into effect, and making sure that everybody understands those. Disseminating information right now is a big thing for me, making sure that everybody's on the same page with regards to the new calendar that we have. We go dead. It's the universal dead period for all programs, July 1 through July 14. I caught wind of a practice that was being planned for next week. And we've disseminated that information plenty of times. You're not allowed to practice. So like just constantly making sure that everybody's aware. So that would be my immediate response to what's most important right now. That's
No,
a lot.
I appreciate that because there's so many things in that go throughout the year, but also are very specific to this time of year. And for those listening that might not be aware, and they're like, hey, why in SAC Joaquin do they have this dead period? And in Southern California, they're doing this. And if you didn't get a chance to listen to Ron Nichetti, either at the conference or on the Contacts podcast, where he actually described the layout of the state, right? We're a federation, which means the sections get to govern themselves within the structure of the state, right? It's not dictatorial top down about everything. And so therefore, a lot of times these comparisons are apples to oranges, depending on what section you are in. So that's something for people that are listening and that aren't aware, like that's something to know and understand. And I love your response, which is we're going into a new league. I need to get educated and I need to disseminate that information because it's now different, right? You can't just shrug your shoulders and be like, oh, we'll figure it out. No, you need to understand how the things work so that you can best serve and you can best operate within that space.
Yeah, let me jump in because I appreciate you saying that. But I do think there are some things that we're going, all right, let's just see what happens, right? But there are some things that we need to make sure that we're in compliance with, that we're prepared for. And there's gonna be some things, either we shrug our shoulders at it or we were unaware, but there's gonna be some things that hit us. And that's just constantly like what I'm trying to share with my coaches. I think this is what we're looking at. This is what it says, but be prepared for this and this. Because I don't know how it works within your league or within your section, but we have these bylaws and everybody seems to think they understand the bylaws. And then you look at them and you go, there's some gaps here. What about this? And you don't really deal with those things until they happen, or at least that's been my experiences, right? There's some stuff that we thought that was understood, but that's not what it says. And so now here we are, and we're in an all league voting procedure. And I think that this is how it should go. And they say this is how it goes. But the bylaws say that this is what's supposed to happen, right? So I do think, and I appreciate that because you're right. Like, I want to be as educated as I can. I want to disseminate that information to everybody to make sure that they are as educated as they can be. But then I also need everybody to be ready, right? There's plan A, and then there's plan B. And then there's the one that you didn't know you were going to have to execute it all.
As an English teacher, right? Mice and men, baby.
Yeah,
Best laid plans of mice and men. So I think to that, and I'll just wrap up and then go to the last question here before I let you jump off, is that these are things at the athletic director level that need to be understood, and there needs to be participation at the league level, right? So in our league, one of the reasons why it's important to understand your bylaws is if you come in there and it's this is dumb, this is X, this is stupid, this is how we used to do it, all this, and it's that's fantastic. And if you don't want to be part of the league, then apply to go to a different league, right? In your situation, it's different because you didn't ask to be in that league. And so now you have to adjust. And my question, you don't have to answer, this is more a rhetorical for everyone. Is there a commissioner of your league? Who's the final say so, right? That's the interpretive body when you get to those gray areas that should be, in theory, messaging that out, right? Are you meeting as a league multiple times throughout the years to get out in front of these things? And if you're not, then hey, that's where you got to push information up and say, these are the needs of your member schools in this league. And I think that's something that is a different challenge in your section, right? Where you're getting moved into a league where these bylaws exist and you didn't necessarily ask to be in that league, versus in our section, people have to ask to go into the league. So there's agency and there's history and there's things of, we knew what we were getting into to a certain degree. Yeah. So, okay.
For a quick clarifying point, we did ask to move to this league, by the way. We went through a process and we thought it was the best league for us. But I think what you're getting at is essential. And it comes to a point in our section too, where you think about this, so we're moving into the Greater Sacramento League. So there's myself, and there's 2 other schools that are moving in with 5 schools that had been there before. So now, are we still the Greater Sacramento League, or now are we a new league? So do we have to adopt the constitution of the prior league, or what role do myself and the 2 other new ADs have in terms of going, okay, this is what you were doing, but maybe that's not what we should be doing now. So that's my role now. That's my undertaking, is really dissecting these bylaws. And we've had some opportunities to do that already. We've shared bylaws with our former league. We've looked at bylaws from other leagues. But anyways, like going through that process. But yeah, I think that's a great point. And I appreciate you throwing out there to everybody, because everybody's different. We have a commissioner. That commissioner interacts with other commissioners within our section, right? Section rules come down. Commissioners disseminate that stuff. Then we all have opportunities. But within the league, it's the athletic council, the ADs, that make up. Though that's what we're doing. We're looking at, hey, this one doesn't make sense, versus, okay, wow, that's really cool. Let me share that with my former league. They might like that.
I think that's the inherent value of the way that SAC Joaquin does it. I would say there's a lot of positives and a lot of negatives with the way they do it, but you're constantly bringing new information in and now having to merge those, right? So you got 3 add-ons, 5 returners, and you got to figure out, what are best practices that we want to hold on to? What are things we want to let go? And you don't get that when you have a static league alignment, right? So
for sure. Yeah, no, I agree with that.
I think that's a great point. Okay, last question, and this is what you already answered, but if you could pin somebody down and ask them any question that you could about the role and the job, et cetera, what would that be?
That's a great question. And I wrote it down so that I could think about it, and then I didn't think about it at all because we were talking about other stuff. So I will say, and I know I'd mentioned this earlier, that one of the things that's important for me right now, foundationally, I feel like we've built a really good staff of head coaches. So now, wanting to do a better job with my lower levels, I think that's something that I would ask current ADs. Hey, what's your involvement with lower level coaches? For me, I've always said, and I don't know if this was, arrogance or negligence or maybe a little bit of both, but I'm not dealing with lower level coaches, right? I'm dealing with varsity coaches. Varsity coaches are going to deal with their assistants and their JV coaches, right? So whether that's the right play or not, that's the play we've made. I would like to become more involved now with support staff. I think that's something I would ask experienced ADs, or maybe even ADs with new ideas, is, hey, how involved are you with your entire staff, right? When I disseminate information, I send it to varsity coaches, and I say, make sure you share this with your lower level coaches. But ultimately, if a lower level coach violates a rule that gets us in trouble, that's coming down on the varsity coach, and it's coming on me, right? So that would be something I think immediately I would ask. And then the second thing I had mentioned earlier was my desire to create both a mentoring system and an evaluation system. So that would be something that I would ask. I try to each year, and this was something I did as a coach, right? So I'd hit the off season, and I want to get better at X, Y, and Z. So that was for me as a basketball player. As a basketball coach, 1 year it was, I want to look at zone offenses. It was different ways to vary up defensive scheme coming out of timeouts or whatever. And then I'd study those things. What are people doing in clinics and listening to podcasts? So now as an AD, we try to go each year try to add something new for my student body, whether it's awards banquets or special events or stuff. So each year we're trying to add something new for our students, and then something that I want to improve on within the department. And so that obviously those would be things I would ask others.
Love that. And those are definitely going to get asked. I got a couple more recordings today. You will have the benefit of answers coming your way. And I think for everybody that's listening, those are good things to marinate on, right? I'm not even going to try to answer it right now. I think it's a great challenge that Coach Wilson just gave to go out and get answers to that. And what he didn't mention is when he was a basketball player, where it started this postseason improvement plan, is how every season, every single offseason was about learning how to shoot. Never changed. And it's all good.
Yeah.
The other things he was really good at, so it worked out for him. Coach, appreciate you being here today.
Not true.
We'll
Now we're
talk
just
soon.
lying. What is this, like a presidential debate or something?